As Linda said, I'm the Procurement and Sustainability Manager with DC Central Kitchen. Just to get started, I'm just going to tell you guys a little bit about me. As Linda said, I was a Campus Kitchens volunteer when I was in college. I went to Wake Forest University, and I got involved with Campus Kitchens after going on a spring break trip at Wake with our Campus Kitchens Vista and learned about the program. That's me in the picture with my senior leadership team, which is really fun to look back on. And so I got involved as leading cooking shifts as well as food recovery shifts, and got really interested in hunger and food justice issues. And my senior year, I was looking to figure out what I wanted to do. I applied for the AmeriCorps program and applied for a VISTA position to run the Campus Kitchens at Johns Hopkins University. So I got to continue my work with Campus Kitchens, working there at Johns Hopkins with their students in the Campus Kitchens program to help them develop their food recovery and different volunteer programs. And then that eventually led me back to DC Central Kitchen. I'm from this area originally, so I got a job here and now been working to run the food recovery at DC Central Kitchen, as well as all the procurement we do in terms of purchasing for our social enterprise operations. So, food recovery at DC Central Kitchen is obviously a very large operation since we have been around for about 25 years, so have had that long to establish ourselves within the DC community with restaurants and grocery stores, and many different places know us as the place to donate leftover food, which is a great privilege to work in a space like that, and has allowed me to see a lot of different places to recover food from that I might not have thought of or done when I was an undergrad or working on at different universities. So in 2014, we recovered over 855,000 pounds of food, and a big piece of that, half of it, was fresh produce, which was a big change from really where the kitchen was 5 or 7 years ago. The kitchen's roots are really in prepared food recovery. As many of you all probably know, the story of Robert Egger, that he was a nightclub owner and started the kitchen from sort of seeing the food waste that happened in his industry. A lot of the places that the kitchen originally recovered food from, and for many years was only recovering food from, was restaurants, catering companies, convention centers, places like that. But the kitchen really, as we grew and the number of meals we served grew, we realized we really needed to source more unprepared product to be able to increase the nutritious quality of our meals and be able to make meals from scratch. So we began working with a lot of different donors to be able to access that raw product that I'll go into in all the different slides. But that's just kind of a big shift at the kitchen that has made a difference in terms of the quality of food that we get and the ability to menu plan and make sure we're sending out really nutritious food. So this is just a general list of the types of donors we work with, and I'm going to go through and talk about each of those specifically, but if any times there's questions, I'll let Linda show me when that happens, and feel free to type a question, and I'm happy to address that. Cool. So one of the first places that the kitchen actually gets a large amount of their food is the Capital Area Food Bank, which is our area's Feeding America Food Bank. It's humongous. And they're a major source of, we get commodity PFAP product from them, so the Emergency Feeding Program. Basic products, a lot of protein, pastas, rice, canned vegetables, canned fruit, that sort of thing is coming from the food bank. In addition to when we go pick up, we can also get produce from them as well. Well, it's not exactly food recovery in the sense of it's going to be wasted food. It's brought in through government programs. It still is a really huge source of commodity donations that are really staples at the kitchen that allow us to have some consistency in terms of knowing we're going to get 100 cases of chicken. I know these quantities are going to sound crazy to you guys, but it's what I'm used to thinking about. 100 cases of chicken or 50 cases of potatoes coming in a week that we know we can make a full round of meals out of. And I think for at the Campus Kitchen scale, it's still something to look into. When I was at Campus Kitchens, we never recovered from food banks, so this could be a new source potentially for some of you all if you have one around you and you can register as a nonprofit to receive these donations on a regular basis, just sort of fill the gaps for when you know, a lot of times the donations you get are not quite enough to make a complete meal, and that can be something very challenging. You might just get a lot of bread or a lot of produce one day, but you're missing protein, and this can be potentially a way to get those commodity things to make complete meals.
And we actually do have a campus kitchen on the call that does recover from a food bank, and that's Amanda at Marquette. Are you there, Amanda?
I am.
Woohoo! Would you like to share with us what your food recovery from your food bank looks like?
We work with Feeding America of Southeast Wisconsin. They have an online ordering system, and all their perishables are on the floor. It's the best way to describe it. We usually go once or twice a week, depending on where we need to fill our gaps. Usually our gaps are in protein, so we can sometimes we can order ahead on that one, or we'll just see what we can find on the floor, which is more limited. They had a changeover a couple of years ago that changed the way that they did their inventory system. So our food bank is great. It's great to build a relationship with the food bank, because if you're a small organization like most of the campus kitchens, and you make friends with the folks who are working, they help you out a little bit. But we get a lot of produce and dairy, and then we fill in protein, or like, what was I thinking? At the food bank that we work with, most of the things are that if it's purchase, we don't get the stuff that is like purchase price, but they do have, most of their product is, there's a maintenance fee on it, which is, at our location the standard is 19 cents a pound, but they run specials on pretty much everything. So we can sometimes get stuff for free or for a penny a pound. So we kind of focus on, like, if we need a little extra protein, we'll get some yogurt that's a penny a pound instead of getting something that's more expensive, and help stretch our food dollars to make it a little bit more economical. That's a big basis of what we do. Do you need more, Linda?
Awesome.
No, that's great. That's awesome
Okay.
to hear that you guys are able to use it in that way. I just see a question that someone's asking, kind of what you covered about, do most food banks charge for the food you get from them? And I think you pretty much hit the nail on the head, in that most of the time it's donated food, so it's at that 19 cents a pound price range. Our food bank also does sometimes have extra products that they'll sort of put on special that's even cheaper. But 19 cents a pound is, you know, if you're going to be otherwise going to a grocery store or somewhere else to fill in those gaps, it's an incredibly cheap way to get protein if you need to fill it in. And additionally, they also have free food, which is typically the TFAP items. If they're a Feeding America organization, they'll have the emergency feeding program items that are always free.
Amanda, can you just really briefly tell us how you got a partnership started with the food bank? I know Amy referenced this, as long as you're, if you have a nonprofit status, which we'll go into that particular issue in a couple minutes, but how did you get started with that?
Our partnership was already existing when I got here.
Okay.
So, and the things that I've discovered is that we kind of are a different model than most of than the standard Feeding America client agency or partner agency, so getting started, I think they just went up and applied and talked to the program staff at the food bank to let them know that even though we don't necessarily fit their restrictions, at our food bank, almost every other agency is either a pantry, like a straight pantry, or they're a meal program that serves on site. So that's one thing that may be something that needs to get worked around to have the food bank to understand that that's what we're doing, but understanding our model is sometimes a challenge for them. That was one thing that I noticed when we had different staff that we were talking with. We've had the same contact person at our food bank since before I've been there, and she's just like she just kind of shakes her head at the idea of the if there's a restriction, she's just like, well, you guys are doing good work, so we're going to just keep you.
Yeah, I can echo that. I mean, we haven't really ever been restricted by the fact that we're not a pantry or not serving meals on site, but we're definitely one of the few organizations that the Capital Area Food Bank serves that is doing meals off-site. We're kind of like always their unique example because a lot of times the reporting they ask for just doesn't apply to us. They want to know how many individuals we served or sort of things that we don't quite count, and so we usually just give them our standard meals and that sort of thing. So I think, like you said, most food banks, when they realize what you're doing is great work, they're going to be accommodating and work with you to make sense for what your programs are.
Great. Thanks, Amanda.
Yep.
Cool. So another big part of our donation supply is wholesalers. They are the second largest place that we get food from. Majority of the food we get from this produce. And so we started working with wholesalers really at that time when we were switching from prepared food and trying to get more raw, unprepared product. Really kind of thinking about the food system as a whole and basically looking at the supply chain in terms of where food waste happens and sort of going back a step, going instead from the consumer and retail level of the grocery stores and the restaurants and catering companies to looking to where they get their food from. And at that point, you get to a much larger source of product. So for us, it's a great place that we can get pallets of product at a time. I know that for some campus kitchens, that might not be an ideal thing you might even want. However, I think it can still be a possibility to look into potentially if there's other food recovery or food organizations or even food banks in your area if they're recovering from wholesalers, and see if you can kind of work together to set up those relationships. Many wholesalers are basically on a weekly basis constantly having to get rid of product, whether it's been over-ordered by a customer or the order got cut in half or the product didn't come in to the quality that they wanted it to be. And so typically it's a lot of those reasons that it just needs to be tossed away. It's completely fine. This large picture here is a picture of one of probably 10 pallets of tomatoes that we recovered in a single day from our favorite wholesaler, Papa's Produce. And the tomatoes are totally fine, but they are perishable. So we work to process them ourselves and also work with other organizations to sort of spread the wealth around. So a lot of times we, even as large as we are, can't handle large capacities. So we work with other nonprofits to share that produce. So it's an idea for maybe larger campus kitchens that are looking to get larger volumes of produce, or if you potentially have some partnerships with other community organizations that want to go together to get larger amounts of produce. It's definitely out there, and it's a source of a lot of food waste in the food system, and a great starting point if you want to find more. Gleaning, one of my favorite things to do. So we have a pretty strong gleaning program. Throughout the year, we work with area farmers markets to glean at the end of markets. There's a few in DC that last year round, so we get to have the fun all year round. We also do, obviously, most of the gleaning from farmers market during the harvest season. That works basically by setting up relationships with whoever's running the farmers market and making sure that they're, a lot of times they might already have somebody set up, but figuring out if there's sort of room for another gleaner to come in. And basically we go around at the end of the market and talk to the farmers about any produce or any products they have that they would like to not take back with them and want to donate. And we typically fill our van up every week with produce from different markets that we go to. And it's a great thing to be able to also give individual donation receipts to each farmer, which has been a little bit of a challenge for certain markets, but we sort of strive to do that, in that we try to tally which farms are donating to us so that every month we can let them know how much they're donating, really to just try to make sure that the farmers are making the most of the tax incentive that they should be able to receive, and because many farmers markets are run by nonprofits, so they're not necessarily going to be able to claim any tax deduction, but a farm could. So making sure they get that connection. Additionally, during the harvest season, DC Central Kitchen does weekly gleaning trips, where it's a volunteer activity on our website. So volunteers sign up every Thursday to go gleaning with me at different farms throughout Maryland and Virginia. It's a really fun, hands-on activity. I think for college campuses, it's a great way to get student groups involved. If there's farms in your area for a weekend trip or afternoon trip during the week, typically we approach farms and let them know what we want to do and who we are, and that we're picking for a hungry organization. Many farms are very open to it. It's sort of just a matter of if they have product and when, and so calling different farms and making sure that they have excess, and many are happy to have you come and pick and bring your own bins and fill your truck and take it back. So that's a great option and opportunity to really, as I say, stop food waste at the source and keep sort of that. I see there's a question here. So in terms of time of year in this area, so we're in the Mid-Atlantic region, we typically start gleaning mid-June, depending on how bad the winter was. Last year, I don't think my first trip was until maybe the third Thursday in June because it was such a cold winter. And then we'll typically go through the end of October. So it's really just dependent on how long farmers have product, but that's typically what I've found to be sort of the sweet spot in terms of when we can go. Especially, those July and August months, there's lots of stuff. We work with, commercial farms, but we also work with a lot of pick-your-own orchards. It's kind of a really other cool partnership that we've developed, because many of these orchards and different berry farms, they're only going to sell what the customers pick. So anything that falls on the ground or anything that just isn't picked by the customers, they're not going to do another run-through. They're not going to sell it. They're not having typically another venue to sell it for. And it's not worth their labor and time to pick product if they're not going to get enough money for it. I mean, it's all about economics in terms of farming. So they let us to come in there and pick up any apples that have dropped on the ground, which is a ton of apples, and we'll fill an entire van up, all of perfectly good apples that maybe just need a good wash or one little bad spot picked away. We make a lot of applesauce that way, and so it's another sort of source besides just your regular commercial farm if you're looking for places to go.
So does anyone I'm going to unmute everyone. Does anyone on the call right now recover from farmers or farmers markets and have a great partnership they'd like to share?
CKMU has been at Marquette.
I actually do.
We've been recovering from our local farmers market for the past 5 summers. Basically, just started as we realized that there was a market on a day that worked well for us to be able to get things during the summer, and we just talked to the people organizing, and the next week we were picking up. It was that easy. We bring our own bins. Farmers are happy to support us, and one thing that we noticed in our area, many of the producers are Hmong and don't necessarily speak English as their first language, which the first couple of weeks was a challenge until we found the right farmer. And then she told everyone else to give food to us, and from then on we didn't have any issues. And every summer we find her first, and she makes sure that everyone knows who we are, because many of the folks that we were working with weren't quite sure who we were, and to have someone who was able to explain in their native language made it a lot easier, and then it was just hand over fist supporting us, which was really, really awesome.
Awesome.
Great.
And then Samantha at Northwestern. Oh my gosh, so many of you glean from farms. This is awesome. Samantha, do you want to share a little bit about how your recovery from a farmer's market has helped drive other community partners?
Sure. So we started collecting from the farmer's market with another pantry who had kind of been doing it for a couple of years, and we started this summer. So we've been working a little more closely with them, and then found some really common interests with the group that runs the farmer's market. So they do a lot of work in the community, and they've helped us kind of reconnect with the local library and some different produce donation spots. And it's just been a really nice thing that works throughout the winter here, even when we're not picking up during the summer. So hopefully when we pick it up next summer, it won't be like we've missed any time at all.
Awesome. Yeah, it's something that I think a lot of campus kitchens have learned is the importance of maintaining relationships year-round, even if you're not around or they're not around. So that's a good point. Allison at Augsburg, do you want to tell us a little bit about your farmers market partnership? You might not be on the phone. So Allison at Augsburg says that they used to glean from 5 or 6 markets, and now they've just scaled down to 1. They give most of it away at a local high-rise building, which is actually great, and that's part of the reason that we recently changed our reporting so that you're able to not only input the number of meals you're serving, but the amount of fresh produce or grocery bags that you're giving away, because that's awesome. And students take the rest to the kitchen to process for their meals. It's a lot of work, but tons of fun. And I think Amy will agree that gleaning is a lot of work.
It's a lot of work, but it's a lot of fun.
Jordan at Kentucky, are you on the phone? Are you able to talk?
Yes, I am.
Oh, great. Do you want to share with us about your new partnerships with Glean Kentucky?
Yeah, so we at UK are housed within, the dietetics program is housed within the College of Agriculture, and obviously in Lexington, agriculture is kind of like a really big thing. We have lots of farms around us. And there is a organization that works, they're based in Lexington, but they kind of work all around Kentucky. They're called Glean Kentucky, and their, I guess their mission is to collect food waste, or to prevent food waste at the farm level. But they don't really have, they're not meant to convert the food into meals. So they kind of just pass along to our local food pantries. And then when we came about, since we came about last semester, we started working with them. And they've been really good at helping to divide some of that food up with us. A lot of times, like, they work as an organization. Their group of people goes and picks up the food and takes it to, if they're going to a food bank, to the food bank or whatever. But with us, a lot of times they try to get volunteers from actual campus kitchens to come actually glean the food with them, and then we take back whatever we can.
That's awesome, and that's a really good way to develop community relationships and maybe get community volunteers one day, or who knows where a partnership like that could eventually lead, so that's great. We have a question, and then I want UVA to contribute. And our question is, how far in advance do you get notice from farms to come glean? And I'm sure it's different for different places, but Amy, what do you normally do?
So I try to find out what farm I'm going to be going to about a week in advance, mostly because I have volunteers anxiously waiting to hear where they're going to be traveling to, and they typically have to make carpool arrangements. Sometimes that doesn't work out as planned, and farmers kind of can't give me an answer until it's a little bit closer to the day. So it definitely requires a lot of flexibility. We have pretty much a set day of always Thursday because that's when our volunteers have signed up. So that kind of can create a challenge in that we always have to make sure the farm can go on that day. But it, usually at least a couple days in advance, a farmer will know if they're going to have leftover, food on the fields. I don't know, whatever other people's experience has been.
Yeah, it can be different.
Yeah.
So that's a good place to start. All right, Estelle at UVA, Campus Kitchen at UVA has some partnerships with local farmers, and then they also have a partnership with their local food hub, which is going to be a transition to sort of our next topic. So Estelle, take it away.
Okay, thanks. So first, a really quick comment about farmers markets. We thought that we weren't able to get into the farmers market as of last summer because we knew somebody else was gleaning, but we ended up talking to who's already gleaning there, and that turns out to be Society of St. Andrew. And so we actually just talked to them, and they are there every weekend at the farmers market, but they could really use an extra hand or two. So what we've done last semester is send a couple of volunteers to help them glean, and in return we get some of their whatever they collected. So that worked out really well for us, and they've set up gleaning trips too. So they might be active in your area if you haven't had that kind of opportunity already.
Yeah, we work with them. They're great.
Yeah. So for the local food hub, I wasn't here when the very first connection was made, but it turns out that our local food hub, which is actually called the Local Food Hub in Charlottesville, has an arrangement with our UVA Dining in Aramark. So it works out really well for us because we are allowed to take food from the local food hub and cook it in the Aramark dining halls, which may be a little tricky with their restrictions on what you can bring in and take out and such. And so what our arrangement with them looks like is every Friday, or in the past every Tuesday or so, we go there for 2 hours and we just do miscellaneous work around the warehouse. A lot of the times it's like taking several pallets of apple cider or crates of eggs or whatnot, and you just put local food hub stickers and where the where it's come from. So local food hubs, I guess their model is to literally be a hub for small farmers around the area and to distribute their food to local restaurants. So in return for just a couple of hours of work, which is pretty relaxing when it's warm out, we get those, for example, boxes of tomatoes that just aren't good enough to go to the restaurants but are perfectly good for us to use. So that's what our relationship with our local food hub looks like.
That's really cool. I just wanted to let you know that I work with that local food hub a lot to purchase food from them for our school foods program. So I've been there and toured with them to see the space, and pretty much every week I'm talking with Alan Moore and getting an order in. So when I heard that you guys work with them, I was really excited. So they're great.
They're really, really nice, yeah.
So Estelle, we had a couple questions. Okay, so one is how do you find the local food hub? And
So actually, there is a really cool interactive map that I will have Andrea add to that.
The pantry.
The pantry that you guys have. That's basically a map of all the food hubs across the country. It's a pretty cool map that you can zoom in and zoom out and click on to see all the food hubs in the area. And a food hub basically is any, basically organization that aggregates food from various small farmers into a space and then distributes it to different buyers. So basically it will handle the marketing needed, the packaging, the labeling, the transportation, basically allowing these small or mid-sized farms to access markets that they otherwise would not be able to tap into, mostly because they might not have the volume needed to meet the needs of these larger buyers. So really cool, innovative ways to bring local food into different institutions, and there's definitely local food hubs or food hubs, regional food hubs all around the country that are doing really cool work, and many of them are nonprofit-based and have very much so a social and environmental mission. So I definitely would think making sure that limiting any waste and donating to food banks is definitely a part of their mission. So definitely, I'll share that map.
So we had another question come in, and Estelle, I don't know if you are able to answer this. And the question is, how did you, as the Campus Kitchen, gain a good relationship with your Aramark dining service provider? Can you answer that at all, Estelle?
I can answer part of it. I wasn't here for the very first initiation of this relationship, but I think that Aramark and whatever your dining service is called, they're willing to listen if you kind of give them something in exchange, as in we can bring down your numbers in terms of waste and whatnot, and we're a student group, and it's really good for Aramark and for these university organizations to be working with students.
Yeah, thanks, Estelle. So I know that some of you have had, it's very interesting how different dining service providers work on every campus, and I know that especially you, Florida, who's asking that question, has had issues developing relationships with your dining service provider. I do want you to know there is no sort of one-size-fits-all answer to that. But that we are on the national level working on developing relationships with all of the major dining food service providers, including Aramark, and we're hoping that by sort of developing more of a national relationship, we'll be able to help you more on the local level. So stay tuned on that, and I know that you guys, Florida, Emily, your program manager, has been a really good resource for you, and we'll continue to work with you to try to connect you on a regional level as well. So we hear that, and we're thinking of you, I promise. In the interest of time, we're going to keep, yeah, you're welcome. We're going to keep moving and talk about restaurants and catering companies.
Cool. So this is, as I kind of talked about before, really the roots of where DC Central Kitchen started our food recovery. We recover from a few different restaurants in the city, as well as a lot of the major catering companies. A lot of the ways that we've connected to a bunch of these restaurants is a program called Food Donation Connection, which I believe information is also in the food pantry that Andrea put together. But basically, Food Donation Connection is a nonprofit organization that connects you to different restaurant chains like Capital Grill or Shop House or Cheesecake Factory, and basically does the connections of figuring out who the manager is, giving you their contact information, and sort of facilitating that relationship for you to then set up a weekly pickup donation. They sort of manage their own receipt tracking, though since we have our own receipts, we also have donation receipts at all of our pickups with those organizations, but Food Donation Connection kind of facilitates it and keeps track of what we're donating through that program. So that's one way that we've connected with a lot of different restaurants, and it's, I think, can be a good fit for a lot of campus kitchens, and that it's, it's typically smaller amounts of food. It's, it is prepared food, so there is kind of that challenge of how to fit it into your meals. But when you get things like rice or, with like Shop House, it's like this Asian kind of fusion Chipotle style place. We usually just get like pans of rice or pans of vegetables or pans of chicken, and then we can combine that into what we're making that day. And usually works pretty well.
Food Donation Connection, just so you guys know, will be present at our Food Waste and Hunger Summit this year, which will be great. And I was just on the phone with them 2 days ago, and this Harvest Support Program, just so you all know, is available to 501c3 organizations. And does Food Donation Connection? Hold on one second on that question. So to become part of their Harvest Support Program, you have to prove that you're a registered 501c3 organization. And just so you all know, you are, but the contract you sign with us says that you operate under the 501c3 status of your college or university, not of the Campus Kitchens Project nationally, except for if you're one of our 5 nationally staffed kitchens. So that might be something, if you're looking into that, they're open to having Campus Kitchens join, and if you run into challenges, we're happy to facilitate that on the national level. But that might be something that you need to talk with your school administration or your sponsoring office or whoever it is that you work with at your university to make sure that that is cool with them. And then our question is, does Food Donation Connection also facilitate connections with local, not chain restaurants?
I think most likely not, as far as I know, but it's still worth checking. Basically, when you sign up for Food Donation Connection, a representative calls you and basically tries to find matches for you by asking sort of what you're looking for. So there may be some local restaurants that have enrolled in it. It's mostly playing towards chains because they can get the corporate offices involved. But local restaurants, you definitely can approach on your own. I think with restaurants and sort of any sort of catering company, it's very much about, kind of the standard things of establishing when they need pickups and what works for them and good times to sort of make it convenient if they need you to bring your own bins or pans or that sort of thing. All right, next. Cool, yeah. So corporate food service. Obviously, many of you are all familiar with dining halls on college campuses. That's sort of the roots of Campus Kitchens and where many of you most likely hopefully get some of your food from. So I won't speak too much on that. So DC Central Kitchen does recover from a few DC area dining halls, mostly just at the end of like certain holidays, before Thanksgiving or before summer break. Typically when a university dining hall needs to clear out their kitchen, they'll give us a call. It's usually a whole truckload of product that they need to toss out. We also have partnerships with sort of different types of corporate food service. We have partnerships with different hotels or the Washington Convention Center, different business campuses throughout the area, and government buildings. So all places that have these sort of general cafeterias, many we've established relationships with to recover food as you would from a dining hall on a college campus. In addition, another place that we get a lot of food from is sports stadiums. So the concession stands at maybe potentially your universities is another place that definitely has leftover food, whether it be we get lots of cut produce from the Nationals ballpark, as well as the Verizon Center in DC. We get sort of a lot of like protein donations, like chicken tenders and burger patties or things like that that are sort of left over and they need to move out before the next event's happening in a day or so. Additionally, we also work with some school food providers. So different school food services that different chains may have leftover excess food certain times of the year, especially around holidays when they're going on break and they have excess food in their inventories. So different high schools in your area, figure out who their food service providers are. Revolution Foods is one school food provider that's nationwide, and they do all individually prepared frozen meals that are locally sourced and healthy. And we, whenever there's a snow day in DC, typically get a very large number of little mini meals that we then combine to make a larger meal for the kitchen. So they're a good place that is familiar with DC Central Kitchen from sort of the higher level, so they can be a cool place to reach out to. So just different ideas for other types of large food service that maybe if your dining hall isn't cooperating, there could be potentially some other dining halls in your community that might be owned by a different food service provider that could be more helpful. Next up, grocery stores. So it sounds like a few of you guys probably also do some grocery store work. So these are examples of some of the ones that we work with on a regular basis. We basically have set weekly pickup days that we go to pick up. Usually it's a lot of produce, some dry goods, and definitely a lot of baked goods from many of these grocery stores. For many of them, we just have to be very strict about how they can package the food, if they need us to bring our own bins, just to make sure that things are being kept separate and safe and clean. Additionally, bakeries, we definitely have lots of bakeries that reach out to us to donate different bread and pastries, to the point that we almost have to limit how many pastries and baked goods we can accept. But if you're looking for those kind of items to sort of have as a side dish for your meal, they can be a great resource. Panera has a really strong corporate, chain-wide donation program for their day-old pastries and bread. So I know that they would always be a good spot to start from, in addition to local bakeries in your area.
So I think a lot of you recover from grocery stores, but there's two campus kitchens, at least at first, I want to call out. Jenny, are you still on the line?
Yep.
Sweet. Jenny is our campus kitchen staffer at St. Louis University, our inaugural campus kitchen. So Jenny, could you talk about how you developed and how you maintain your partnerships with grocery stores you recover from?
Sure. I was, pardon me, I actually wasn't here when the relationship started, but I do know a little bit about it. Somebody actually knew someone that worked there. A student on our leadership team knew someone that worked there, and so that was the first step to saying, hey, here's what we do, so, just scour your network. Somebody knows somebody. And I think the real key is consistency. I've seen a lot of other people that pick up from them or from other grocery stores kind of come and go. And it's hard at a campus kitchen maybe as opposed to DC Central Kitchen because we have a lot of school breaks. And in the summer, a lot of kitchens don't operate. But the grocery stores want it to be easy. So, the key is making it easy for them and, always going at the same time, never missing a day. If you're going to miss a day, getting coverage, somebody else that can use it, lining that up in advance, trying to anticipate. Because if they have all their stuff out and you don't show up, they're going to be like, well, there's other people that want this food. It's valuable. So I think that's really the key to maintaining that relationship and just being appreciative and professional. And, it really helps to have one person that's doing it maybe all semester long, or at least most of the time, if it's the same day you go each week, just so everybody knows the drill. That helps a lot.
Yeah, and SLU has developed this relationship to the point where, and it probably wasn't very hard for them to do, but that their grocery store sort of, I don't know if brags is the right word, but uses them as like a cool example of how they're invested and involved in their community, and like, look at this really cool organization called Campus Kitchens that we support, which is sort of like a great beneficial relationship as well. Thanks, Jenny. Now, Tyler at Lee, are you on the phone?
I am. Can you hear me?
Great. Lee also has some really great, really strong partnerships with local grocery stores that I'd love for Tyler to tell you about.
Yeah, so our food recovery program with grocery stores really goes back about 25 years ago. One of our faculty members just started picking up on Saturday mornings from a local chain. And since then, I mean, it's shifted to kind of more of a student-powered effort and has really expanded since that one pickup and one partnership to where we're running routes 6 days a week to pick up from different grocery stores. I mean, things we do to kind of maintain these relationships, to kind of reiterate what's already been said. I mean, consistency and communication are the two biggest things. These grocery stores, they're trying to move product out the front door. And while they don't mind getting it out the back door, sometimes like preparing the food a certain way is a little extra work for them. So like when you don't show up, it's kind of frustrating and can feel like a waste of time. And so just being consistent with the pickup and being there when you say you're going to be there, and communicating any difficulties or anything like that you may have. One of the biggest challenges, obviously, that we all face is over the summer having the staff to continue your operations. So we really look to local students who live in the area to continue the efforts that have been made. Because I mean, it's the food recovery with these grocery stores has become very competitive in our area, and so missing time, especially a large stretch of time, would ultimately mean the end of the partnership. So really, to get in the door, you make relationships with the store directors, the store managers, and then go from there. So.
Awesome.
Great.
And then Tyler, can you just tell us real quick how you all interact with grocery stores and food banks and how you're sort of like the in-betweeners in your community, just in case that happens in others?
Yeah, so like 5 or 6 years ago, the area food bank for our region kind of like started overseeing all of the food recovery from all these grocery stores. So I guess Feeding America has these corporate partnerships with like Bilo and Publix, and so they actualize them on the local level, and because of the broad region that the food bank covers, they really can't get to all the places. So now, like where we establish the partnerships on our own, it's moved to a kind of thing in our area where nonprofits, and we're one of those, are like picking up on behalf of the food bank, and so we basically serve it as their emissaries to these grocery stores. So.
Awesome, thanks. And the reason I wanted Tyler to tell you all that is just in case you were to approach a grocery store that's a large national chain and they say, oh, we already have a relationship with Feeding America, don't take that as a no. And then, you know, the next step would then be to find someone at your local food bank who maybe could tell you more about that and see if you can get involved as well.
Cool. This is just one other thing that I'll touch on briefly. There's sort of some unique relationships that the kitchen has developed that are sort of outside the box. Manufacturers or, you know, different companies that basically process food before it gets to distributors. These are a few of the examples that are sort of local ones in this DC area that sometimes have excesses or different, you know, excess products that they donate from their manufacturing hubs. A lot of sort of proteins gets donated sometimes, or different dry goods like La Pasta will call us when they maybe have a pallet of pasta that, it's honestly the weirdest things. It's like it was labeled wrong and they can't sell it, so they physically can't sell it, they have to donate it, and so we end up getting a whole pallet of really nice pasta. Interesting things like that. It's sort of the biggest thing I feel like with these sort of firms is to just reach out. You know, it could go nowhere, but eventually it could go somewhere if they end up having some product left over and don't know who to call. So just another thought. I just put a link in this page to the Central Kitchen's food donation guidelines. I know Campus Kitchens pretty much follows the same ones, but that's just a brief overview of our guidelines. You guys are all very familiar with these, so I won't go through them. But when we're approaching donors, obviously that's the first thing I always attach and make sure that they have access to, and if they have any questions about them. The big one in terms of prepared food is always that we do not accept food that has been set out or served in a buffet, and sometimes people are a little upset to hear that, but you know, at the end of the day, food safety is really our #1 goal, and we can't take risks with that. One just sort of piece of advice in terms of food donations is really to not be afraid to say no if it's food that is not necessarily useful. And you don't want to turn off donors, especially if it's a new relationship, but you really do also want to make sure you're providing nutrition. So if a donor is really only donating soda and baked goods consistently, it's sort of figuring out if this is a useful donation. There's many donors that over the years we've had to realize to just stop picking up from because it wasn't actually helpful or beneficial. And really redirecting those food donors to maybe a food bank or somewhere else if they're insistent on wanting to make sure the food doesn't get wasted, which is obviously valuable, but when it comes to limited space, I mean, you'll probably struggle with, I'm sure you'd rather be receiving fresh produce rather than a lot of baked goods. And that's just a list of the things that we officially do not accept at the Central Kitchen. And our final thing is just to, you know, when you're reaching out to the community, to not be afraid to also ask for what you really do need. I've sort of, since I've been here, really tried to change the way we ask for food donations from individuals and corporations and, you know, food drives. We, in November and December, get bombarded with requests to do a food drive for us. And majority of the time, it ends up looking like that top picture, bins and bins of cans and individual items that we as a kitchen can't really make that much use of because it's so random and sporadic, and it's hard to make a full meal out of any of those items. So we've really flipped it on the head and really focused and asked groups to just focus on 1 or 2 items when they collect food. Just, you know, have one group just collect brown rice or just collect dry beans or canned tuna in a way that you could actually get enough to make a meal out of it. And that's a really, explain to people that that's a much more concrete and valuable donation than just a bunch of random different cans that don't really go together. Since many of you all do prepare meals, you're not food pantry, so you are looking to make a complete meal. The bottom picture is also a cool thing that we did with one of our farmers markets that I'll just mention briefly. It's with a farmers market in DuPont Circle, which is one of the biggest markets in the city. They do a Thanksgiving food drive for us, but it's sort of a unique food drive in that basically they collect money for about a month beforehand from customers for the food drive, and then on the day of, we go there to also collect money, but also use the money they collected to purchase food from the farmers. So it's a cool way in that we are getting really great food, but we're also supporting the farmers who every week donate to us. So we're able to walk around to farmers and purchase bins of carrots or potatoes that are all going to come to the kitchen. So it's a great way for people who might be shopping at the farmers market and want to help, but also want to support the farmers market that they love, and it's ensuring that you're getting nutritious, high-quality food. So around Thanksgiving time, it could be a cool, different type of food drive to run, or really all year round in the summertime as well, rather than your basic clean out the cupboard and donate whatever you have kind of thing.
And Samantha at Northwestern just said that she always gives out grocery lists when she does food drives so that people know exactly what they can buy. And just in general, no matter what the type of donation, giving donors guidelines is almost never a bad thing. So that's, like Amy said, you want to help yourself, not just make them feel like they're helping you.
Yes. Many of these have been talked about by all of you all, just general, successful tips to have a good donor partnership. Consistency, being on time, always giving receipts and thank you letters, being appreciative, and additionally, involving your donors in programs if possible. If there's ever sort of events you're having on campus for your campus kitchens, or sort of thank you events or community events, to invite donors and make them sort of feel a part of the program. A few years ago, the kitchen started having a donor reception, which was mostly for monetary donors, but we also invite a lot of our food donors to it. And it's been a really cool way for people that I mostly only email with or have phone calls with. Typically, they're a lot of warehouse managers or people who probably don't typically get invited to fun, cool events, and they were always really excited to come and see the work that's being done with the food that they're giving, kind of having that connection, seeing where it's actually going. Yeah, that's, I think, most of my presentation. Now just questions, and we're going to open it up.
Yeah, so does anyone have any other questions for Amy or anyone else who talked on the call?
I do.
Yeah, go for it.
Okay, so one of our big problems at the University of Florida is when we, have plans to kind of try and grow our organization, we have a lot of problem with retention between semesters with the campus kitchen staff. I didn't know if anyone had any tips. We're just trying to maintain a consistent staff, so that way we have people that are on the same page with each semester, so we can move forward instead of trying to catch people up.
Are you talking about consistent volunteers?
Yeah.
Great. So does any campus kitchen have some input? I'm wondering if maybe Samantha or Jenny or Amanda have ideas in particular, or Tyler, he's got pretty consistent volunteers too.
This is Samantha from Northwestern. One of the things that we found has really helped a lot is utilizing those community volunteers during breaks. We have a couple that come in every week, and then we have a couple that just come in. They'll come in once a week during the summer or over a Christmas break, and it's a really nice way to get out into the community, to kind of recruit volunteers that way, and they don't leave for school breaks, which is always really nice.
Great. Any other questions? Okay, so real quick, we are almost done. I do want to show you the page on the pantry that we've been sort of referencing that there are items on or will be items on. At this point, I want to invite Andrea, our Vista, who's been doing a lot of this sort of toolkit documentation, resources for campus kitchens, to explain a couple of new things that are on there since maybe you last looked.
Yeah, so this is one of 3 pages that are under the food resourcing tab on the operations section of the pantry. So just the top 3 resources here are either new or updated in the last few months. So the first thing is a guide to finding new food donors, which goes over a lot of what Amy talked about, but it has both general tips for figuring out who to reach out to and kind of the process of getting in touch with them and maintaining partnerships, and then also some specific tips for working with different categories of donors. And I've got some new ideas from Amy's presentation today that I'm going to add to that, so it'll be even more updated. And then right below that, we have sample donation letters that you can use. Those are Word documents, so you can just download them and edit them. And we have places where you can put specific information about what your campus kitchen does and statistics about hunger in your community. Obviously, you can write a letter from scratch if you want to, but if you're looking for just kind of a form to follow, if you haven't done something like this before, hopefully those will be helpful. And then I also saw there was a question about the food donation guidelines. So that's actually on a different page under food resourcing shifts. We'll see if Linda can follow along while I talk you through here. Yeah, so under donation guidelines, we have slightly updated versions, which are not here right now, but either later this afternoon or tomorrow, I will make sure they're in this place. So it says food donation guidelines is a Word document there right now. We just have a more updated version that I will replace that with. And also, yeah, so I think there's like general guidelines, and then there's a specific form that you could give to a food donor, just an easy reference for them to see what does and doesn't work. And if you ever think of anything else that you would like to see on the pantry that could help you with these relationships, let us know, and maybe I can develop it.
Awesome. Thanks, Andrea. And Amy said that we would add the map to the food hubs, or the food hub map, which we certainly will. And that will also be under this expanding donation resources, and that will be either, again, later today or tomorrow. The issue of training volunteers that Florida brought up is a really good one. It applies to all of the different kinds of shifts you're doing. And so Tyler at Lee has a really great volunteer orientation that some of you may have heard about if you came to boot camp. And so he's offered, he just put his email in the chat box. He has offered to talk with you guys, Florida, or anyone really about sort of comprehensive volunteer orientation. And for Lee and many campus kitchens, they've shown that really comprehensive volunteer orientation where you give the whole context of one volunteer shift, and the whole history and story of the campus kitchen has really increased the longevity of their volunteers and has increased the number of recurring volunteers they have. I also know that Meredith College has done this pretty well, especially with their cooking shifts, and they're one of our newer campus kitchens. And there are other campus kitchens that do that as well. So if you are feeling like you'd like some resources around that, please let your program manager or me know, and we'd be happy to connect you all further. So at this point, that is all we have. Thank you so much, Amy, for joining us and sharing your knowledge. And this presentation was recorded, I did remember, and so it will go on the pantry again later today or tomorrow as well. But you are more than welcome to reach out to any of us with any questions, any follow-up things, or any new things at any point. So thanks again, especially to everyone who contributed, everyone who asked questions. This was great, and enjoy the rest of your weekend. We muted.